Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you make use of the resources that you have. On today's episode, I had an opportunity to talk with another new host of a Be the Change Media Network podcast. Muminah Koleoso, among many other roles, is the host of the Sister Station podcast, which is a podcast that amplifies the voices, stories, and lived experiences of Black, Muslim, and global majority women. I had a wonderful conversation with Muminah and learned so much about her story and the work she's doing. So without further ado, let's get started with this episode featuring Muminah Koleoso.
Thanks for having me on the podcast. And to introduce myself, hi everyone, my name is Muminah, and I am a Muslim, Nigerian, British poet, writer, journalist, content creator, youth advocate, and now, more recently, host of the Sister Station podcast.
That is a very long list of things, and I'm super excited to chat with you about all of them. You're also, as you said, award winning. I want to start there because that's the latest award, at least, is very new. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I do want you to brag a little bit.
So this story has two main points, and in typical sci-fi fan fashion, I'll start in the middle, go back to the beginning, and then we'll get to the end. So the middle bit is that I studied computer science and maths at university. And so at that point in my sort of career and life trajectory, I thought that I would most likely, continue on in the STEM route and probably go into something like software engineering, something tech oriented, that kind of stuff. After I graduated, but after I graduated, I decided that actually, you know what, I don't really want to go into a mainstream STEM related degree. That I would rather follow my passions into media and the literary arts. So yeah, the award that I won was for culture and entertainment. So it was the Young Scott National Award for Culture and Entertainment. And my path to getting there doesn't just start after I finish uni and I go into that field, but it actually starts way, way back when I was a little kid. And back in those days, I used to read a lot. And when I say read a lot, like I was constantly reading books everywhere. I even used to read in class, probably when I wasn't supposed to be. And yeah, I always had a book in hand. And naturally, being the avid reader that I was, it sparked a lot of creativity in me. So I started writing poetry when I was a lot younger. And I also started writing short stories as well. And at that time, like, because I was still a kid, like, I laugh every time I try to tell this story because when I think about the kind of things that I was writing at that age, it's just so funny. Like, especially a lot of my poems actually used to frustrate me back then because I would just, like, a lot of poetry that you tend to be exposed to as a kid, it's just lots of fun rhyming poetry, like Dr. Seuss type stuff. So that was basically what I was trying to replicate. And I wasn't very good at rhyming. And funnily enough, to an extent, even now, I'm not like I've definitely improved. But back then, I used to get so stuck. Like after two lines, I've already run out of rhymes. And so it's quite funny that as much as I enjoyed writing, it used to frustrate me a lot back then because to me, poetry just meant, oh, I need to rhyme stuff. So that was kind of like my origin story. And then in terms of short stories, my stories were always short, mainly because either I would forget that I was writing a story and I would start a new one, or I would just end on cliffhangers because, like, yeah, I was just like, this story isn't going anywhere. So we're just gonna end it here and everybody pack your bags, go home. It was really like that. So over time, my sort of writing process has since changed, especially when I got to my teenage years and like secondary school. I started to write more about sort of mental health and looking at aspects of my identity. So at this point, I was writing a lot more introspectively, thinking more about the world and making sense of different parts of my identity, my culture, and also, yeah, writing was also an outlet for processing my emotions and stuff as well. And also during that time, I started to think more, I guess, critically about what I was reading and how it was affecting my perspectives of the world. And back then, I realized it more subconsciously, but it's only more recently that I've been more exposed to research and seeing things sort of spelled out explicitly that I really understood what was going on. But back then, I had like a mild idea of the fact that what you watch, what you read, like all the sort of media and everything around you, it really does affect how you think and how you perceive the world and see other people, right? And so I was really starting to question this a lot more, yeah, in my teen years, in my school, secondary school sort of era. And I realized a lot of the time that as much as I was finding sort of pieces of myself in the sort of literature, the media I was exposed to, a lot of the time it was missing the mark. So in general, my reading, as much as it was wide, maybe like genre wise, it wasn't very diverse because most of what I consumed mainly had, characters that were all from the same kind of background. There wasn't much diversity. I was hardly ever seeing myself reflected. And even if I was, there was almost always there was always this split between if there were Black characters, they're not Muslim, and if there are Muslim characters, they're not Black. And it really like fed this sort of identity crisis because I'm just there thinking, like, am I just not real? Like, I genuinely felt it's so funny. I'll be reading a book and I'll be reading fiction, and I felt like a fictional character because, like, I was so almost alone in my identity because in so many spaces I was in, I was the only something or the only everything. So between the only Black, Muslim, woman, wearing hijab, and then when I go to sort of when I go to read books or watch movies, and I want to sort of relax and enjoy something fun, I'm then finding myself being upset by the representation of somebody who kind of looks like me, but at the same time I'm like, oh my goodness, why is this Black character having such a stereotypical role? Or oh, they just killed off the only Muslim character again, or, just constantly seeing all of these things over and over again. And by the time I got to university, in a way, I put a lot of these things to like a lot of these feelings to the back burner because, uni is rough. So I spent most of my time, studying, trying to get good grades. And so I was reading and generally like consuming, media and books and stuff a lot less. So it was almost like a kind of hiatus, so to speak, on my creative trajectory. And it was when I got to like final year that I really started reading again, and I started to explore that side of myself, and I was writing more often. So I always wrote, but just not as frequently. So then, the frequency kind of picked up again, and I found myself back in, that world and realizing that, oh my God, this is still a problem. Like, even though things have improved a little bit by this point, like there's a bit more representation in terms of, Black and Muslim characters and also writers and just people in the industry. So there's definitely more than when I was a kid, but it could still be a lot better. And I realized that, what, instead of, watching from the sidelines, why don't I try and, be the change that you want to see, as cliche as that sounds? So that sort of resolve was starting to form in my mind. And I decided that, in a way, I had no clue. And I still have not like, a complete clue, but at least I have more of a clue. But back then, especially when I was, graduating uni and, transitioning into the world of work, things were very precarious, lots of question marks. And I honestly had a resolve that, like, okay, I know what I'm going to do, but where do I start? I have no idea how to go about this. Like, if I want to be a published author one day, how do I publish books? Where are the creative jobs to get into this industry? And it's really just been, flip flopping, trying to find my way. But alhamdulillah, like, things have worked out quite well, and it's not been that much to plan. Like, a lot of things just kind of, you know, tumbled into the next thing and kind of spiraled. So when I finished uni, I actually still ended up working for my university. But because I was working part-time, I still had a lot of spare time to, be working on my writing and everything outside of that. And so in that time, I was, submitting my work to publications, and I also got into freelance journalism. So through that, I found an avenue, especially like the freelance route, because one thing that used to put me off journalism was because I didn't want to have to write stories on things that didn't appeal to me, or that yeah, I didn't enjoy and stuff. But then now being a freelancer, I could basically focus on writing any things that I was interested in. So yeah, anytime I had like an idea that I thought was interesting, and then particular people that I wanted to interview, I would just pitch those ideas, and that way I was able to consistently find stories that platformed Black and Muslim women, and really, showcase the work that they were doing and their lived experiences as well. So that was kind of one avenue that I found, was successful. And as much as a lot of the publications that I've sent some of my poetry, my short stories to have kind of fallen through, like I've faced tons of rejection. At least the journalism was a way that I was still very much in my writing habit, and I was also getting published at the same time and getting paid. So, there were those kind of like bonus points as well. But honestly, I would say that in terms of writing, my true passion, my love is in more creative works in terms of fiction, like poetry and short stories. But I do enjoy like what journalism brings as well. So that's like one aspect of the journey that has been coming through. Another aspect was when I decided to start taking content creation a bit more seriously. And I was a big social media skeptic. And I say this, I'm just going to emphasize this again. I was a very, very big, like all caps, social media skeptic. I was like, nobody's going to see me posting on these apps. I don't want to be here. Why am I here? But over time, seeing so many people make a name for themselves and really be successful in connecting with, diverse audiences, and like, growing their communities, building their careers, I was like, okay, I need to at least give this thing a shot. Worst case scenario, it doesn't work out, we pack our bags, we go. But yeah, I was like, let me just try it out. And again, being the writer that I am, I leaned towards starting off more with LinkedIn, because the whole visual game of Instagram and TikTok, it was rather daunting. So I was like, let me just, start posting like low-key semi-blogging on LinkedIn. And honestly, it's been going pretty well. So I've been in my LinkedIn bag, as they say, and mainly just sharing stuff again as I've been, going along, not always knowing what I'm doing, but I'm like, I'm here. And also, I think a big part of what has helped me in that journey is, as well as the online side of things, I've, been networking a lot through different avenues, and like lots of like attending a lot of events, so different literary events within the industry, various book festivals. So I attended the Black British Book Festival, and that was a really pivotal moment in this whole journey, because through that connection, I was able to apply and be successful in gaining a place on the Black British Book Festival's Creative Nonfiction Fellowship in collaboration with the Jamaican Book Festival. And that was mainly to platform Black, British, and Jamaican writers, and to teach us different skills in terms of writing creative nonfiction, and also to contribute to an anthology at the end of the program. So hopefully the anthology will be coming out later this year. And as well as that, I was able to attend the London Book Fair as part of their delegation. And yeah, getting to the fact that I also have been hosting an open mic online since January. And part of what inspired that was, as I said, I've been attending lots of different events, especially literary events, as well as book festivals have been open mics. And attending open mics has been a really important part of my journey, because it helped me to get over my fear of sharing my writing with the world. Because before, especially in those, precarious teenage years, when I'll be writing a lot of very vulnerable stuff, and I used to think to myself, these are some lines that will never see the light of day. And then here I am on some stage, reading said poems to a bunch of strangers. I was like, never did I think I would be here. But I realized that, in those moments and being able to share my work with people and seeing how much my words have resonated with people and remembering how much other people's words have also inspired me. I'm like, this is something really, really valuable and really beautiful that I want to continue to contribute to. So that has been a big source of inspiration. And so another sort of thing that has come out of attending these open mics, that was it, was realizing that again, the whole ballad of the only, so to speak, which has been my life, i.e., often being the only Black person, Muslim, hijabi, etc., all of the above, in the audience or on the lineup of performers, and realizing that again, we really do have an issue of underrepresentation in the industry. So I was like, what's a way that I can contribute to that and also be able to create a platform where, just the same way open mics have assisted me in my creative and career journey, I can also, provide that platform for other people as well. And the ideal would be to host open mics in person, but obviously that requires a lot of logistic and financial investments, etc. So I was like, let's start small, let's start easy. And that's why I decided to start hosting a monthly open mic on Instagram Live, because I was like, I don't need any additional resources beyond Instagram, and I'll just, kind of start from there. And that's also been a really successful venture. When I started, to be honest, I was gonna say when I started I didn't have many followers. I still don't have that many followers, but like I underestimated how much people would, enjoy having that space, and especially hosting the open mic and focusing on showcasing different creatives that from similar backgrounds to me, i.e., Muslim, Black, women of color. Yeah, just having that space for us has been something that I've really enjoyed contributing to, and so many other people have really benefited from as well. And so, yes, finally, we come to the end, which is the award. So basically, all of these things together, just through various different aspects of my writing, through creating content, through building an online community, all contributed towards why I was recognized. Yeah, I was recognized through this award. And yeah, I'm really grateful and really thankful because it means a lot generally, but also especially given the fact that for the most part, this has not been a field that I have been working in, at least sort of publicly and openly, very long, and at least having this award is motivating and inspiring for me because it shows that, other people believe in the work that I'm doing, and, helps me see that even when, I doubt myself, that, hey, other people see me and they value this work, and, I hope to continue to positively impact people with the platform that I have and the community that I'm building and I'm growing as well. Recently, I have officially launched the Sister Station podcast. And this kind of links to the branding of my open mic because the Sister Station podcast is, at least the mission, the aim is to amplify the voices of Muslim women, of Black and Muslim women, and women of color. And yeah, I'm able to pour into it everything from, my life up until now in terms of my experiences and things that I've learned, and also people that I've met. I've met so many cool, incredible, amazing women that have really inspired me, motivated me, that have supported me, mentored me, etc. And anytime I'm talking to some of these women, or I'm meeting them, and at these events or online, and I'm thinking to myself that this thing that this person is telling me, this is so incredible. I need to share this with the world. But I'm there thinking like, how do I share this with like anyone and everybody that I know? Because anyone that knows me knows that I'm very much not the gatekeeping type. Like I'm an open book. I will, share anything, everything. I'm always forwarding stuff to people. I'm sure they're tired of seeing me in their DMs, but like I'm just naturally somebody that like if I learn something new and I think it's going to benefit other people, I want to share it, right? So I'm there thinking like, what's a good way to like, share this knowledge, spread the good stuff. And I was like, that podcast that I've been saying that I want to do, let me do it. And this is a good opportunity for me to, bring these different people on as guests. And just the same way that their experiences, their stories impacted and inspired me, I want to be able to, spread that positivity and all those insights and everything to other people. So there's that aspect that's, I guess, kind of more serious, but also just we have fun chats and banter. And, sometimes it's fun just to hear, different experiences from people that are similar to you and, have this kind of, I guess, like inside jokes and cultural references that I feel is like missing from a lot of other podcasts. And yeah, kind of going back to try and conclude and summarize all of this stuff, I guess at the heart of everything, because somebody actually asked me recently, they were like, oh, what is your social action work about? And I won't lie, for a second I was a bit stumped because as you've seen, I do many, many things. But at the heart of practically all of it, it really just boils down to amplifying the voices of Black and Muslim women through storytelling. I realized that one of the reasons that Black, Muslim, women of color, people from various backgrounds, basically, that tend to often not be in the mainstream are constantly underrepresented and misrepresented. One of the main contributing factors to that is because we are not the ones telling our own stories, And not to say that if you don't have lived experience in something, you can't tell that story. That's not the case. However, being able to authentically represent certain lived experiences is a lot easier for somebody to do when you're in the club rather than outside. It's honestly quite a simple fact when you look at it that way. So there's that kind of just sort of factual aspect. But then sadly, on the other side, there's like a level of ignorance sometimes that comes into play for people that, try to almost quote unquote like speak for us, i.e., a lot of mainstream white people in the industry trying to, be diverse in a very tokenistic way and just, wanting to tick boxes and then just getting things wrong because they haven't actually consulted anybody from the communities that they're trying to represent. But then sadly, oftentimes there's a very malicious intent that does come through. And when people are trying to push certain agendas, and especially in the current political climate, and constantly portraying people from certain races or from certain, ethnic, religious, cultural backgrounds, etc., as being a certain way, in order to combat that, it is a lot easier to have more control in these creative processes, when you're the ones in the room being able to shape decisions and, really have a lot of say in what is created and how things are done. But yeah, that's another sort of driving force in why I'm really passionate about this, because as much as people might say things like, oh, maybe, media and entertainment is quote unquote not that important and it's a form of like soft power or whatnot, it is very, very powerful. Like, if anything, people underestimate the power of storytelling, of media, of literature to shape people's worldviews and perspectives. And so, yeah, it's super, super important that we diversify these industries and that we make sure that, people with lived experiences from different communities are able to authentically share their stories with the world.
That was awesome. That was such a great answer. I think that you really told the entire story. So, you've created so much change doing social action, and I think, sharing stories and amplifying voices, it's just so incredible. Lots of young people want to create change and make a difference, but they might not know how to get started with that work. what advice would you want to share with those people who might be listening to this?
I'd say my two main pieces of advice, and they're kind of linked, would be number one, dream big, but start small. And two, use the resources that you have. So with the first one, for example, with me, my ultimate dream is to conquer the entire world. Okay, that's a joke. But i.e., my starting point, I have very, very big dreams, big ideas, aspirations that some people might say are outlandish or unrealistic. Dare I say it, delusional. But everything ever made or ever done that you see today was somebody's idea yesterday, you know? Like it didn't just spring out of nowhere. You got to start somewhere, is basically where I'm going. So even if you have this giant plan, giant idea that looks absolutely impossible, if you just start small and you build a little bit, every day, once a week, just in some sort of consistent capacity that you could do, you'll get there eventually. So I would just really urge people to not let the sort of huge daunting aspect of things, hinder you, and try and push past that and just, instead of looking at the bigger picture, actually zero in and look at, the small things that you can start with, and kind of linking to that, using the resources that you have. So I feel especially a lot of us young people, with the stage of life that we're at, between maybe school commitments, family, in this current job market, some of us, unemployment, all these things, like there are so many barriers to being able to do the things that you want to do, and a lot of that boils down to finances sometimes. And so I feel like with all of those things, it's really important to try and look at the resources that you do have, that have access to, especially free ones, especially, if you could, kind of going back to my first point about like big dreams and aspirations, like if you want to do things that are kind of global, international level, start like, local, because sometimes there are opportunities that are near to you that, would be cheaper, more affordable, even free, that you can get involved in, especially in the way of like activism and social action, that there are a lot of, local communities. You just need to find them. So for me, that looked like getting involved with the Young Women's Movement in Scotland, and through joining their Young Women Lead program last year, which was the political leadership program. From there, I've been able to get involved in lots of other opportunities, including representing Scotland in Scottish Parliament for a Commonwealth conference. And from there, I've since joined My Life, My Say as a squad leader, to promote youth engagement in politics and democracy. And more recently, I have joined the I Will ambassador team. So yeah, that's just one example of how getting involved in local opportunities for social action has really helped me to find other opportunities, and make impact in other ways as well. Yeah, so I'd say really try and make use of the resources that you have that are available to you. And then also in terms of like online ways of advocating and engaging with activism, social media, as much as it can be a double-edged sword, the benefits of it being free and the fact that you don't need to like have people's email addresses, for example, to connect with them, and reduce some of the barriers. So yeah, again, just to reiterate, I'd say really try and make use of the resources that you have. Yeah, roll with that.
It was so great to talk with Muminah, and I do think that last piece of advice she shared is so fitting, considering that one of those resources that she's had is Be the Change Media Network. If you haven't already checked out Sister Station, please do. At the time of this podcast episode's release, one episode of Sister Station has been uploaded, and another one is coming this week. So, check out the link in the description to listen to that first episode, and subscribe for automatic downloads of Sister Station. But before you head off to listen to Sister Station, I want to remind you of that last piece of advice that Muminah shared, because change comes when you make use of the resources that you have. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Muminah on Instagram and LinkedIn, and I included those links in the description of this episode, as well as the links to listen to Sister Station. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I'm working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests and incredible hosts like Muminah. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people. And I would also love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys!